Each of us carries the gift of being capable and being happy. We say that one day we arrive, and the next day we leave. An interesting metaphor for the duration of life. Yes, the poets, in this case, Renato Teixeira and Almer Sater, speak in a very simple way and at the same time provide us with a very interesting poetic perspective, presenting life almost as a shock. What is mine? I believe that lately we are all even more frightened by the lack of perception of time, aren't we? We are living in a way that it seems we don't notice time passing. Just yesterday it was Christmas. Carnival is already past. Soon it will be Easter. And so we go on. One day we arrive, the next we leave. Yes, if we don't have an awareness of the present moment, all of this seems like a shock. I remember that last week we talked about the need to understand life as a unique and unrepeatable opportunity. And we talked about how inexperienced we are without realizing it in our daily lives. Also this week on Twitter, someone I admire very much, a psychotherapist, wrote something like this. Of course, I won't repeat it exactly as she said it, because I don't remember the exact words. But every Friday we have a flood of videos on WhatsApp messages saying, "Is it Friday yet?" And she made an interesting reflection on this. She found it a little worrying. Of course, many people might send it just for fun, but the expression "is it Friday yet?" the way it's used on social media gives us the impression that we only endure the week, that we're desperate to live the weekend, as if it were wonderful, spectacular, different from everything we experience during the week. And there's a real sadness in that, isn't there, if you think about it? Because we live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday too, as if it were a weight, a burden to be carried, and only when we start the weekend do we have any relief. I even replied to her that perhaps the problem lies in our not perceiving the value of processes. Yes, because everything I do in my life is a process. It's a process because there are events that are linked together by an objective. That's what a process is. Everything that is linked together, that has coherence, that has arguments, and that afterwards, when you look at it, is a whole. It's not just a detail, it's a whole. The process observes all the phases of what is being analyzed. And in our lives, my friends, if we don't have a necessary wisdom, we will live life always forgetting that it is a process, only wanting the outcome of things. And isn't that the case? If I don't find joy in the process, happiness won't be possible for me. Jung, who was a great follower of Freud, later created a very unique way of viewing the human psyche. He said that human beings remain alive as long as they are nourished by desire. If we don't desire, if we stop desiring, we gradually die. Yes, because for him, desire is a vital force that keeps us alive. It's that inner movement that gives us the disposition to wake up every day, to go to work, to live, to do what we need to do, because a desire nourishes us. And what did he say? When we experience the satisfaction of desire, there may even be a certain frustration. Then we discover that the best part of the desire was building it, and not so much its fulfillment. That's where the popular saying comes from. The best part of the party is waiting for it. Yes, the experience of cultivating a desire. You can call it something else. You can talk about it in another way. Viktor Frankl called it the meaning of life. When you keep alive the meaning of things, of existence, of what makes you who you are, you begin to savor the process, which is not just about the result. The meaning of life, not the purpose of life. It may even lead me to some results. But I don't always get results from what I do. But I need to find satisfaction there in what I do. It's the preparation. What is the meaning of the word hope? Hope. It's not a stagnant, ready-made concept. No, because I hope, I say I am hoping. But does it mean that while I am hoping, I am building what I hope for? Is there also a processual dimension there? You're not sitting with your hands crossed, arms crossed, waiting for what you want to happen. That's why, in Christian hope, it's an active hope, a concept we take from a philosopher. A philosopher, not a theologian. A Protestant, even multi-mm. He said in a sophisticated way that Christian hope is operative. That is, I operate while I hope. I do. I build what I am hoping. 4. This is Christian hope in relation to eternity. Sometimes, many people have a certain anxiety, right? Regarding the longing for eternity, I understand we Westerners have a great difficulty dealing with eternity because we Westerners are very rational. Last week, I was talking about the nun Regina, who is a Hindu. And at one point, during some explanation she was giving us, I noticed that she was becoming somewhat embarrassed in front of us, and then she would stop and say, "But this can't be explained." Yes, because although she is Western, she is living a religion that has a very Eastern philosophy, based on their ability to not need to ask rational questions about everything. They are comfortable with the question. They don't have such a great need for the answer. And sometimes, faith even seems naive. But we Westerners, with this need to rationalize everything, often look at eternity and want to understand it. And sometimes I, as a priest, feel embarrassed having to talk about this in a rational way, when, in reality, eternity doesn't fit into our rational concepts. Then the question arises. Someone asks me, "Father, what is it like after we die?" First, I haven't died yet. I don't know either. I'm in the same situation as you. Then there's my faith. As a Christian, I am led to believe that eternity will be my definitive encounter with God. This can mean so many things, but it's impossible to rationalize it. Because if I try to rationalize it, people who need to imagine heaven as a city with streets, with houses, where the best live, where the worst live, there are people who have an immense need to think of heaven as if it were a place just like here. Yes, if I'm talking about eternity, naturally I need to forget time and space, which are human, earthly categories. Time, the kind we look at on a clock. Space, this location. Where is this house? Where is the other house? Where is this city? You take a map and you identify the cities, the countries, the states. Well, if I want to understand eternity, I have to go beyond rational concepts and what I can rationally talk about. I'll end up with a very narrow view of eternity. That's why Moltmann said that the concept of hope is the fairest and most honest way we have of thinking about eternity. I hope, but I don't know what I hope for. Will it be a surprise? But while I wait, I prepare. Because hope is active. Okay, but how do I prepare? By living well. It is by living well that we prepare for eternity. Stop being anxious about wanting to know what will happen after death. Focus on life. It's the only way you have to prepare. It's the fairest, most honest way you have of looking at your eternity, at what awaits you. It's by living well in the present moment. That's why we cannot understand a religion that makes us despise time and space. For a long time, some spiritualities prevailed that taught people to despise the world. It doesn't make sense, my friends. The world that Jesus referred to. You are in the world, but you are not of the world. This expression of Jesus to his apostles wasn't so that they would despise the things of the world, but so that they would know that this world is fleeting. This house is fleeting. This material we are using to make this program reach you is fleeting. This television you have in front of you, where we enter, where we pass through, is fleeting. Money is fleeting. In success, it is fleeting. Here Jesus is teaching that there is an interesting way to deal with time and space. Okay, I have it. But I'm not going to cling to what I have, because all of this passes. It's the same with attachment to people. I know it's very difficult for us to lose someone, but our excessive suffering and loss is precisely due to a lack of learning. We haven't learned that people will also be fleeting in our lives. We may even know it, but we haven't learned it. It's like a song, a lesson. We know it by heart. We just need to learn it. There are many things we know by heart, but we haven't learned them yet. Perhaps if we have been educated from a young age to understand death as a natural process in our lives, we would have less difficulty when it happens around us. But sometimes the lack of spirituality, the lack of inner life, makes us too attached to material things and people. That's right. These are our difficulties. Because we are Westerners, we are too attached to time and space, and we want to understand eternity from the limited perspective we have. As a professor of eschatology, I had to talk about everything the church says about heaven, hell, and purgatory. But I had an additional challenge, which was not just to have my students reproduce what the church teaches about this, because sometimes catechesis can be yet another reinforcement of this excessive materiality. So she comes to me talking about heaven, talking about eternity, and she might suggest to me again a reinforcement that it is material. Heaven is material. Heaven is located. Heaven is in time and space. So my challenge as a teacher was that we should know how to speak the language without being trapped by it. Eternity is much more a hope than a closed concept. Okay, I hope, but what I hope for, I don't know. But I live well to hope. And incidentally, The best way to prepare for eternity is by living well. There is no other way. If I am attentive to the processes that surround me, my professional life, my emotional life, and then you can unfold that in everything you do, in all the demands of your daily life. If you propose to live well everything you do, and what is living well, my friends, is being correct, being fair, having the understanding that it makes no sense for you to be an instrument of injustice in the world. Like we had last week that massacre of 2 young men, one 17 years old, the other 25. To think that these 2 young men chose to determine their lives by destroying other lives? This didn't happen overnight, did it? Because this is gradually sown within. We don't know their personal history, so it's not even appropriate to judge. You might even be shocked. You might think, my God, how is a person capable of doing that? Yes, it may be that you too would be capable of doing the same thing if you had gone through the same paths they did. I'm not justifying anyone. I'm just alerting you to the need for us to perceive things with more breadth. Start, for example, by allowing hatred to dwell within you. Start allowing revenge to be lodged within you. Allow revenge, hatred, and resentment to begin to give orders to your actions. Yes, because my attitudes are all ordered by what I feel and think. Or, do you think your attitude is out of place? No. It's always a product of what you thought and felt, and everything happens in the same place. It's in the brain that all this happens. It's in the mind. Sometimes we use the heart, not to symbolize love, feeling. Yes, there's a problem with symbolizing, but it's here that everything happens, thought and feeling. They are what give order to my attitudes. Everything that comes out of me as an attitude, as a gesture, is the fruit of my thought and my feeling. And that's why I need to be extremely careful with what I think, with what I feel, and consequently with what I say. Because speech is precisely the expression of what you're feeling and thinking. If I don't take care, my friends, of what I think, if suddenly I start to nourish, here's Joao Paulo. Good evening. Joao Paulo, thank you for your presence. If suddenly Joao Paulo is part of my emotional environment, I interact with him, and I start to nourish within myself a hatred for Joao Paulo, sometimes without reason, and you know that's possible. Sometimes you take a dislike to a person, you get annoyed with them, you don't know exactly why. You haven't looked for the reasons for this dislike, this difficulty with that person, and you start to nourish a bad feeling towards Joao Paulo. I start to nourish my thought, wow, I would love it if Joao Paulo, if he were fired from his job, if things didn't work out for him. I find out that he's fighting for something, and there, in the silence of my heart, I think that I would be very happy if that went wrong. I'm sure I'm talking here, and you're identified with what I'm saying. You know why? Because we are all the same. At some point, our thoughts have put someone against us, even if it was without reason. And sometimes there are reasons too. What I'm saying is that if you feed what you think about that person, and if you're feeding a thought that is harmful, that is bad, that is damaging, that is unfair, then naturally that thought unfolds into a feeling of aversion, or sometimes it's even the opposite. It starts with a feeling of aversion, and then you start thinking bad things about them. If you feed that within yourself, if, in the example I'm giving, you start feeding my feeling of rejection toward Joao Paulo, and my thought of wishing Joao Paulo ill, that Joao Paulo dies, that Joao Paulo is harmed, I'm one step away from being able to make a concrete gesture that harms Joao Paulo's life. Will it be priests? Many monsters inhabit us. My friends, that's why I look at it. I tell you, we look at these people who are capable of killing, who are capable of murdering other people, and we think we are so different from them. Start feeding the hatred in your heart, and you'll see. Start feeding the revenge, and suddenly you'll find it normal to pick up a weapon and end that person's life. Start feeding the feelings that are diabolical to you, and you'll see. In a certain amount of time, I don't know how long, 2,345 months, sometimes a year, you'll indeed be able to take that person's life, because the devil has taken up residence in your thoughts and feelings. And that's why the word, sometimes it's so deceptive. Sometimes a person says something to you, a word that expresses kindness, but the word is already in service. It's already cunning. It's already tried to deceive me, because it's already in the service of a malicious thought, a malicious feeling. I always say this. Give your feelings and thoughts a break. And the devil becomes part of your life. He starts to become part of your life. That story of demonic possession, I've never seen it. What appears in the movies, I've never seen. Now I see the devil lodge in the minds of many people all the time, who are plotting evil, who have no sense of responsibility towards others. They are dishonest. They are unjust. There, yes, the diabolical is having space to act in the world through that person. So let's just recap. My attitude is a fruit of what I think, of what I feel. If I am feeding thoughts, bad thoughts, unjust thoughts, then you think everything that is bad, lies, infidelity, wickedness. If my thought is nourishing this inside me, it is then also judging bad feelings, which will put me in opposition, to other people. And without realizing it, I become an instrument of evil. I say again, I'm talking here. Are you thinking? Of course, that's good. The program only makes sense if it makes us think. I'm sure you've already identified this in yourself, or in that malicious person at your work, who is always plotting against other people, or that person who has become a dwelling place of dishonesty. They are capable of anything to maintain their interests. They are capable of stepping over others. She's capable of causing harm and doesn't even worry about it. She cheats here. She cheats there. She deceives one person, then another. That's demonic possession. Because we weren't born for this, were we? But at some point in life, perhaps during our formative process, in early childhood, when we are so fragile, when we're not able to reflect on our thoughts and feelings, because we don't even know what is right or wrong yet, what if there isn't someone there to help us purify what we are feeling? Thinking in very practical terms, my child, this cannot be. Because children, my friends, they don't hide what they think and what they feel. So much, so that many times, how often does a 3 or 4-year-old child say, "I'm going to kill you"? They yell this at their mother because they are being contradicted. We might think, but that's so innocent. It's just a child's thing. Yes, but if there isn't correction there, at that moment, a loving, caring correction, my child, never say that again, because it's very ugly. They killed so that she can begin to understand, so that that language doesn't create within her a predisposition to future thought and future feeling that when someone contradicts me, is it right for me to kill? Can I kill? If we don't have someone guiding us, my people, whether the father, a mother, a grandmother, grandfather, uncle, brother, neighbor, if we don't have, in the phase where we don't have this filter of right and wrong, if we don't have someone to help us understand what we feel, what we think, we become future murderers. We will potentially be those who invaded the school, exterminated everyone. When did that crime begin? That day, the day before justice has already concluded that it was a premeditated crime. Yes, but a week before, 2 months before, no. That started in the childhood of those boys, when the essential was denied to them. The essential, when it is denied to us, my people, leaves an immense hole. A child is not born to be a criminal. They were not born to go wrong. Now, what we do with them contributes precisely to that sometimes malicious nature that they have. Do you think that who can say that we don't also have these natures within us? We do. Neglect yourself and you'll see what a monster you become. I always say that. We who are religious, we who live an experience of God, what do we publicly say this to others? I'm not saying that those who don't say it don't live it. I'm saying me, in my case, be a jukebox. It would be contradictory if behind the scenes I were a malicious person. If I didn't have the capacity to recognize my mistakes, if I consciously harmed Joao Paulo, even being a priest, this happens a lot. A religious shell to hide shameful wickedness. Like the priests who were accused of pedophilia, sexual abuse of people who seek them out, or other religious leaders. Priests, pastors, lay people who exercise religious authority over someone and abuse it. They cross the line. A wickedness protected by religiosity. That's what I'm saying. If I don't take care of my feelings and my thoughts, purifying them daily, asking for forgiveness from God and others, I become a monster. Yes, do I have the potential to be a saint? I do. But I also have the potential to be a monster. And it's no different for you. That's why you need to be very attentive to what you feel, what you think, and consequently what you say, so that you don't become an obstacle to yourself, so that you don't become a monster, so that you can only bring out the best in yourself and be able to maintain that every day, so that all this tendency you have to do evil doesn't grow within you. We're going for a quick break, and we'll be back shortly with the Spiritual Direction Program. We're back with the Spiritual Direction Program. Thank you very much for your company, and once again, thank you to the team in Brasilia who receive us with so much affection. Thank you, Andrea, and the whole family who are lending us this house today. Thank you, Joao Paulo. Thank you very much for your presence, my dear. Once again, for the second time with me, isn't it? We did a Christmas program here last year, right? The year before last. I want to remind you that we are preparing for a great pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Great, right? Because of the days we're going to be there a month, you know? We're not going to stay only 12 days. Great in meaning, because going to the Holy Land at the time of Pentecost and experiencing Pentecost in Jerusalem is, without a doubt, a momentous event. We will be talking about it on June 8th, returning to Brazil on the 16th. Our guests will be there. We will visit the main holy places. We will have an experience of pilgrimage. As I always like to remember, my friend Fabiana from the Work of Mary speaks with great wisdom. From her, I learned this expression that the pilgrim walks outside, right? We go to the holy places. But the holy places also need to walk within us. So the pilgrimage only happens when we are able to journey both inwardly and outwardly, allowing God to work in this experience, this journey, a very special visit to our hearts. For me, it's always a special time, a time of growth through the opportunity one have to be with so many people, to be a priest with such detachment, with such simplicity. It's a rule we set at the beginning. It's precisely, don't see me as a famous priest, because that will only be detrimental. It's not that sometimes people, when they really want to meet me, get anxious. I'm happy with this affection, but it harms the pilgrimage. So look at me as just another person there, as the one who is responsible, as the one who will be with you all the time, in a spiritual way, but also as a friend who is on the pilgrimage. So check the conditions of this trip to see if they fit your budget. Divide this joy into 24 installments of 100 with interest. What is worthwhile, we need to invest in. We need to have the courage to bring joy into our lives. Sometimes we keep saving money, saving. Of course, we can't be irresponsible, but sometimes we have the dream of doing so many things and we don't do them. We keep postponing it, and then when we realize it, time has already passed. And we left the money for others to cause trouble in other people's lives, right? So it's good to be aware that we deserve to take our dreams out of the drawer and make them come true. And on this Friday, the 22nd, and next Friday, the 22nd, I will be at the Leblon Shopping Mall in Rio de Janeiro, launching the book, Wherever Your Step May Be, There Your Heart Shall Be. It will be from 5 p.m. at the Travessa bookstore. And we also have a schedule. Next week, we will already be in the United States. We have the show The Sacredness of Days on March 29th. Hindenburg on March 30th. We will be in Nuremberg. And then on the 31st, in Bad Vergiza. That's right, Monica. Is that how you pronounce that name? Where are you talking? You're not even paying attention to the program. Boxburn. That's it, people who wrote to us. I found this one interesting. Good evening, Father Fabio. When I had my son, I immediately experienced postpartum depression. And at that time, my sister helped a lot in raising my son. But after a while, by the grace of God, I recovered, I felt great, and I realized that my sister had taken over my son. Then I started to assert myself in the situation, but very carefully, because my sister cannot have children. But she started saying negative things to me, saying that I was sick. I've tried to talk to my sister and my mother many times, but they say I'm sick. Father, I've even thought about stopping visiting my family, but that's difficult because they are my family, my space. What should I do in this situation? Well, first of all, it's possible that you are right in what you say. I don't know the reality in more depth. I don't know why they say you are sick when you say this. The fact is that when we have postpartum depression, when I say, wow, I've never had it, right? Because I can't have a child either. We, as humanity, I always like to include myself in the discourse when a person faces postpartum depression. I saw this in my own home. My mother, Eloisa, had it when she had her son, Conrado. Postpartum depression practically takes away a woman's ability to be a mother. She even becomes unable to love. It's not just the caregiving. She is deprived of the positive feeling that depression does to us, right? Every time we are in a depressive process, what prevails in us is a negative feeling. It's all that's bad in life that becomes very prominent. And life does have bad things, but the bad things prevail over the good things. This is so dangerous because, yes, the view of what is bad prevails. Soon we become capable of taking our own lives because there is nothing holding us back anymore. Nothing in this time and space, nothing of the meaning of life that can hold us. In postpartum depression, then the woman is not only deprived, she doesn't only lack the disposition to care for her child, she also has a lack of love. And depending on the severity of the condition, she may no longer want that child. Sometimes the rejection is so profound, she doesn't want that child. I don't know what the intensity of your depression was. My daughter, what I do know is that your sister certainly noticed your lack of affection for the boy, and not having had the opportunity to be a mother herself, she discovered, in the help she was giving, that as she cared for her nephew, she developed a motherhood that she hadn't experienced with her own children. And then you have a narrowing of the bond that can become disordered. For example, I remember that in the first days of my sister's depression, which was so severe, my people, that one day in the middle of the night, I remember I was sleeping in a room with her because I was helping to take care of her. I was a teenage boy at the time. I wasn't even in the seminary yet. And I remember that she went to breastfeed Conrado. Conrado was crying. She threw the boy. He landed on his knee at a distance. And as soon as she did it, she was startled by her own action. It was a shock for her, and she had a crying fit. But she didn't want to pick the boy up again. So I picked him up, took him out of the room. Thank God he wasn't hurt, because it was cold and he was very bundled up, right? Children used to be wrapped up so tightly, right? Swaddled. They put on diapers. I don't know what else they put on, a blanket. So he looked like a ball against the wall. Poor thing. And then I picked up Conrado. I took him out of the room, and he calmed down and became peaceful. I developed a very close bond with him in those first few days of his life. But, of course, I'm a man. I wouldn't get attached to him in the same way his sister did, especially because her motherhood, which she hadn't experienced yet, her maternal instinct came to the surface. Because we can't forget that we are instinctive beings, my friends. And what is an instinct? It's a movement that doesn't go through a decision-making process within us. Before we talk about our thoughts and our feelings, which we do have some control over, yes, you need to learn to control your thoughts, your feelings. Controlling one makes it easier to control the other. But instinct, it's animalistic. It's not reflective. So when it comes, we are capable of, it's like that story when a mother sees her child in danger. What comes over her? It's not rational reflection. It's a maternal instinct protection. So she's capable of facing any danger. She doesn't even reason. If the boy is about to be eaten by a lion, she throws herself on top of that lion because she doesn't think that the lion is bigger than her. She's moved by instinct. So this is after the instinct has settled in. What was she able to reflect on about this? Now, the fact is that I'm going to think much more from the perspective of your feelings, because I don't know about your sister's feelings, since you're giving me permission to say something about what you're experiencing in this situation. I'm going to talk to you and not about what concerns your sister. It's possible that you relive some of your depression every time you see your son interacting with your sister again. So it's possible that at the moment you were depressed, you started to realize that your sister was being more of a mother to him than you were. And now, cure the depression. When you see your sister establishing a normal aunt and nephew relationship with your son, in your head, you recall the feeling you had at that time, that there was, yes, in fact, at that time your sister was being more of a mother to him than you were, but not anymore. When they say you're mentally ill, they might be a little right. It's possible that you are now recovering from the past, that feeling of loss that you had, because that's very difficult to manage. The mother who experiences postpartum depression knows that she is not able to take care of her child, and when she sees another person taking care of him, she may at first think it's good that someone is doing for her what she is not able to do, but deep down, she feels that she is losing her child to that person. We are very confused, aren't we? Our feelings are all very contradictory. So in the same feeling that makes me happy, that someone is taking care of my child for me, I can also feel the opposite of that feeling, which is loss. Someone is taking care of him for me, and I'm losing the opportunity to take care of him. So this contradictory feeling is uncomfortable. But when we are emotionally healthy, we can easily correct this. You equalize the two sides of the feeling and you're fine. Now, when we are mentally unwell, it's very difficult to achieve balance. So maybe today you're not seeing the present moment. You're only seeing the scene of your sister showing affection to your nephew, to your son, something that is very natural. I have immense affection for my nephews when I'm with them. But because you have a record of loss in relation to your sister from the time of your depression, you bring up that feeling. So I believe it would be more interesting for you to think from your own perspective, if you are not actually resurrecting the feeling of loss from that time. And then you'll have to admit that you are that your mother, that your sister are right in saying that you are sick for thinking this way. It's not a problem for you to understand that because your sister had a closer connection with your son, he continues to have a close relationship with her. But it's not because he rejects you as a mother. No, it's because he was very well cared for by her. So the feeling is positive. So don't interpret a bond of love that your son has as something negative. I'll give you an example. My mother is a woman who always knew how to love me very much, in the right way. I never remember my mother showing jealousy. And look, I was always a boy who, thank God, was always very loved. In the neighborhood, since I always liked older people, being with them, talking to them, I had many grandmothers in that area of my house, and they liked me very much. I never saw my mother feeling jealous, because I was receiving love from them. Today, the same thing. Sometimes I have situations where I call my mother, and I'm here with so-and-so. My mother knows that this person likes me very much, that they appreciate me being here. For example, at Andrea's house, that they have affection for me, admiration. In short, I'm part of the family here. My mother feels happy when she knows that I'm in a place where I'm loved. So, if you reframe the feeling you have, you'll focus on the positive side of things. Wow, that's great. My sister loves my son so much, and you can even interpret this as a privilege. If you need to go on a longer trip, who will you leave your child with? Certainly it will be with your sister, who you know takes care of him as if she were his mother. So remove the negative aspect of feeling, and you'll be left only with what is good, and be confident in yourself as a mother for goodness sake. Sometimes we have a feeling of loss when we forget the competence we have in what we do. You are his mother, aren't you? So, if you do your job as a mother well, there's no reason to feel insecure. Your son will never forget that you are his mother, no matter how much he likes his aunt. And the fact that there's a close bond of love between the two of them won't change your relationship with him. You know, folks, sometimes we have some insecurities that we need to learn to manage. Sometimes we suffer unnecessarily, without reason. We exaggerate the negative aspects of what we see and feel. I can bring up the chemistry aspect. It doesn't make sense for us to stay together. It's tied to the negative aspects of what we've seen, of what we perceived. It goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of our program. Life is a process. It's a journey. I leave home to get to a place. But I have to remember that the path itself is already a place. In fact, it's one of the last conversations a girl has with a man in this book. As I said last week, I've been recommending this book a lot because I believe it is an aid to living in these times, and that we are so unwilling to have this inner conversation that helps us clarify things. The man, after going through the whole process of the conversation with the girl, comes to the conclusion that it is necessary to understand that the path is also a place. It doesn't make sense for me to plan my life to get to that place and only believe that happiness will only happen when I conquer that place. No. The whole process of conquering that place should bring me joy. Otherwise, life becomes a burden. I know your daily life is heavy. I know it's complicated to be you, to do what you do, to be where you need to be. I know that sometimes you have more burdens than joy. But try to discover something in the midst of this burden that can bring you joy. To be fair, so that you don't live so bitterly. Yes, sometimes we pay too much attention to the negative aspect of the process, and we become unwilling to recognize what can also be good in everything we are experiencing. There's so many things today calling out to us, so many opportunities, so many paths waiting for us, including here inside. There are paths you need to walk within yourself. Rejoice in the processes too, not just results. We won't always have results. And I go back to something that was also said in the junk. No, excuse me, Lacan said that. Lacan said that it is desire that moves us. Okay, so I'll go. I'm going to identify that. Waiting for the party? Is that good too? What creates inner motivation for you? And will there come a time? There will be situations where the party won't be anything close to the joy, the anticipation. It was much better to wait for it than the party itself. That being said, it happens. Sometimes, what I waited for made me much happier than the realization of what I waited for. That's what I wish from the bottom of my heart, that you pay attention to the paths you walk, that you discover, because it is also a place, the path is a place, that needs to be savored, that needs to be perceived. I have 2 hours on the bus to my job. Take a book. You will have the opportunity to read much more than someone who doesn't have those 2 hours. Instead of being glued to your cell phone all the time, you can read a book a week. If you have 2 hours on the bus every day, discover the habit of reading. Walk the paths that the book provides you. Make something positive out of that routine that is sometimes heavy. And may God bless us in this purpose. May our paths be transformed into places. And may our hopes motivate us more and more to build, in the time we have, the eternal reality that we, good morning, we want to enjoy.